Hello, hello. My name is Jill Osborne. I am the president and founder of the Interstitial Cystitis Network. It is Thursday, October 11th, and I thought I would do a drop in IC support group meeting trying to get people on the East Coast of the United States who might have just been coming home from work. So I am broadcasting live from Facebook and YouTube. Been sick a couple of days, slowly getting better. Hi there, Sherry. Hi, Barbara. Hello, Paula. How are you? So, as always, I am more than happy to take anybody's questions. I just have a headache for a sinus headache, but I don't know. That little support group angel just kind of whispered in my ear and said, "You need to get online right now and do something." So, I thought I would very spontaneously, as you can tell by how I'm dressed. Hello, Melinda. Hello, Barbara. But you know what? I'll tell you one reason why I wanted to do this today, and that is I got a little bit frustrated with the phone call I had from somebody today who, um, let's see, how do I want to say this? Who was insisting that I did not believe that. God, I don't even know how to introduce it. You know what? It's all about bacteria and IC. How does IC relate, if any way, to the concept of infection? Okay. We go historically, if we go back 25 years when I was first diagnosed with IC, what we thought at that point in time is that IC was quote unquote a bladder disease. And in fact, if you look at some of the old therapies for IC, they were bladder strippers. So what they did is they actually stripped off the bladder lining with silver nitrate and chlorpactin, the assumption being that, well, maybe IC's infection of some type, maybe an infection that nobody's ever found before, right? And back in the 1990s, there was a wonderful doctor. I met him. We called him Dr. Fuzzy, Dr. Paul Fugazzato. Was not a medical doctor. He's a PhD, ran his own lab, I think in North Dakota or South Dakota, somewhere in there. And he was of the perception that IC could be what we call a fastidious infection, a small, deep infection in the bladder wall. And of course, we're talking 1990s. We're all just kind of wondering, well, could this be IC? This is interesting. Here's a new theory. And so we all sent him our urine. And he did something called broth culture testing, where he grew urine out for up to 4 to 5 days to see if any small bacteria would grow. Okay. And I did it. We all did it. And he said that I had enterococcus and micrococcus, and I followed his uh, suggestions for antibiotics, which I think weren't even based on antibiotic sensitivity testing, and grew myself a wicked candida infection that I had for 2 years, which was ridiculous. Hello, Kathy from Georgia. And at that time, we were doing a lot of lectures with a lot of the top IC researchers and doctors. If you go over to the IC network, you'll see we had a big guest lecture series. We still do them on occasion. It's all free for the internet. And I asked every single doctor who appeared, including the head of the National Institutes of Health who appeared on our lecture, and asked them, what do you think of the Paul Fugazzato theory for antibiotics? And they all went, it's flawed. One of the reasons why it was flawed is because he was reusing glass containers for urine samples. And he would autoclave them. He would heat them up to try to kill bacteria. And of course, we know now that bacterial biofilms will survive um, uh, autoclaving. And anytime you send urine by mail, you're creating an environment for bacteria to grow, perhaps inappropriately. So the Fugazzato approach really did not have any support among the academics. Throw into the University of Maryland, which was the top IC researcher at the time, did what they believed were extensive bacterial screens, DNA screens, and they too found nothing consistent. They didn't find the same bacteria in patients over and over and over. What they found was occasional random bacteria. Okay. Um, However, we listen. You think Facebook is challenging today with people fighting each other? Well, I mean, you should have seen life before Facebook on the internet news groups. You think Facebook is bad. Those news groups were terrible, and the infighting was incredible. So there was a lot of infighting about antibiotics and infighting about bacteria, and um, some people made careers out of the bacterial approach. Other people didn't. I, as a scientist, because hello, I do have two chemistry degrees, including a drug development degree, couldn't fall on the bacterial bandwagon for one very clear reason, and that is that there was no consistency. There just was no. If IC was caused, if IC in everyone was caused by bacteria, this new rare bacteria, I think the University of Maryland would have found it 25 years ago. In fact, they're the ones who instead found the anti-proliferative factor, which turned out to be a really big breakthrough in IC. Well, there's always been a small group of people who continue to further and foment the IC as a bacterial condition. And with a lot of blanket statements saying everybody should try antibiotics. And in fact, I remember I got in a fight with somebody about it on America Online because they just said flat out everybody should take antibiotics. And my answer back was no, everybody should not take antibiotics. I'm allergic to tetracycline. If you tell me to take an antibiotic and I take tetracycline, I can die. So, and people were kind of saying antibiotics are safe and yada, yada, yada. And it was uncomfortable and not based in science and not based in fact and nothing. Okay. So I want to talk about this phone call I got today. So I got this a phone call today from somebody who was sharing with me that they said that I had squelched the bacterial stuff, the bacterial discussions. And my answer was, what? No, I didn't. Not in any way, shape, or form. I absolutely believe that there is a small percentage of patients who have infection, chronic infection. I have always believed that. I completely disagree with anybody saying blanket statement everyone with IC has an infection. And the subtypes prove it. The subtypes prove it, my friend. So now that we're doing the subtyping, now we understand the many variations of IC, now we can put it all into context. So, so consider Hunner's lesions, IC subtype 1. Hunner's lesions, those are either a nerve that is stuck in the on position, kind of a nerve that is massively inflamed, or we now have some evidence showing that the Hunner's lesions have been linked not to a bacterial infection, but to a viral infection. So that debunks the old Fugasato approach from very, very quickly, because we didn't know that. I didn't really understand that an active viral infection in the bladder was even possible. I did you? I didn't. So, IC subtype 2, bladder wall driven. So if you have pain as your bladder fills with urine that is relieved by urination, we know that that's coming from your bladder wall. We know that. But what's it coming from? So here's a picture of an injured bladder wall. So this is a perfect example of a bladder wall driven patient. These are not Hunner's lesions. These are petechial hemorrhages. Is this infection? No, this is not infection. This is injury. This is a bladder that has been stretched and that causes tissue in the bladder to get torn, and that's often what causes these red spots. And in fact, in many of these red spots, they're false positives. Back again 20 years ago, we thought that hydrodistension with cystoscopy was gold standard, and that finding petechial hemorrhages was absolute proof that somebody had IC. And that's simply not true anymore. Now we know, and researchers said this 15 years ago, that the test itself can cause this, right? So this doesn't necessarily mean that this person has infection. It does show that the bladder is traumatized. It does show some pretty significant trauma. Some of these red spots are from the test, but some of these red spots could be direct bladder injury. Okay, are they infection? Probably not. What else calls bladder wall driven? A chemocystitis. I was working with a chemotherapy patient earlier this week. Really wicked chemotherapy. I mean, he had terrible bladder pain, terrible urethral pain, diagnosed basically with cystitis. And he found me through the internet, and I spent a lot of time with him, gave him a lot of suggestions. Does he have infection? Absolutely not. No, he has Cytaxin chemotherapy. I mean, Cytaxin cystitis. Consider ponder IC septic 3, pelvic floor driven. Is there any infection in that? No. That's pelvic floor muscle injury, falling and hitting your tailbone. For those are the patients whose IC begins after having a baby or a car accident or a fall or a rape or a history of athletics, something that has traumatized the muscles. And again, all the researchers, we now believe that the largest subtype for IC is in fact IC subtype 3 pelvic floor driven. Subtype 4 pudendal neuralgia. Is that infection? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That, in fact, is nerves that are compromised usually by tight muscles. I see subtype 5, central sensitization, my subtype. Is that infection? No, absolutely not. In my 25 years of IC, how many times have I had a real bladder infection? Twice. Twice. That's it. And so I think it's really important to give us a reality check here. It's super tempting when you have symptoms of frequency, urgency, pressure, pain to grab an antibiotic. And I mean, seriously, you can't lie. You can't lie to me because I'm an IC patient too. Do you have leftover antibiotics in your bedroom? Oh, yeah, you do. I know you do because I do, right? The question is, when are you going to use them? And is it appropriate to use them? And you have to understand the symptoms of frequency, urgency, pressure, pain are the same symptoms that you can have if you have an injury, if you have a trauma, if you have pelvic floor dysfunction. So it's getting back to the core concept. Is IC bacterial? In the vast majority of patients, it's not. In some patients, it could be. It could be, especially if you have a history of Lyme disease. Okay, if you have a history of Lyme disease, we've absolutely found the Lyme bacteria in the bladder wall. That is real. And of course, if you have any doubts at all, you get your urine tested. And rather than doing a typical urine test, why don't you do the correct test, the next generation urine sequencing test? And let me see here. I think I have, where is it? If you go to bladderhealth.org, you come to this website, well, you can watch the videos on it and learn about it. I mean, what frustrates me is the people who say to every patient you should take antibiotics. That is not true, and that is dangerous. Because the more you take antibiotics, the more you run the risk of developing an antibiotic resistant infection. And we are perpetuating overuse of antibiotics in our environment and the effect that that's having in our bodies and in our environment. And it's what we're trying to, we're now calling it antibiotic stewardship. We're trying to be smart about our use of antibiotics. All right, so that's my little tiny rant about that. Don't guess. If you think you have infection, get the test, right? Just get a test, get it checked out. You might feel better taking antibiotics because they actually have a mild anti-inflammatory effect. Don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. That doesn't mean that it's killing bacteria. It means that it might be giving you a little bit of an anti-inflammatory effect. So that's my little mini rant. I have them every now and then, but I am ready to take your questions, my friends. So if you've got questions on IC, please throw them out. We're simulcasting on Facebook and YouTube. Facebook up here for me, YouTube down here for me. Also, just so you know, if this is your first time at a chat, I would love to send you 2 free gifts. Number 1 is our IC Awareness Breath Bracelet. See, how cool is that? What? Oh, that's upside down. And our diet card. Now, my staff just told me that 5 of them got returned for insufficient postage. I packed them personally. And the postage is correct, but I think somebody at the post office was annoyed that there was something that was kind of thick in it. So I know 5 of you didn't get it from the last time, and I still have a small group to send out. The way you're going to get that is you're going to send me your snail mail address. If you could send your snail mail address to icnetwork@mac.com. That's my email address, icnetwork at M as in Mary, A as in Apple, C as in Charlie.com. I would love to send you those as a gift. Alrighty? Okay, so let's take some questions here on YouTube. Betsy says, "My IC started when I went through menopause. What do what does the role of hormones play in IC? Hormones play a massive role in IC. Um, well, actually, I'm going to take that back. Hormones play a massive role in bladder health because think about it. Your bladder is the only organ in the human body designed to hold toxic waste because urine is body waste. Urine contains ammonia and urea and all sorts of you know things that your body is trying to get rid of. That's the purpose of urine, is sloughing off bad things, is sloughing off stuff. Well, so if you ponder the question, how can the bladder hold ammonia for 2 or 3 hours and not get damaged? And the answer is that your bladder is a hollow organ covered with a nice thick barrier of mucus. Your bladder is like your mouth. It's a hollow organ that's wet. And here's a picture of it, right? So this is a side view of the bladder wall. So the turquoise up here is your mucus, and then you've got your superficial cells, and then you've got your blood vessels and your nerves. So this mucosal barrier right here is estrogen dependent. So when you're young and you have lots of estrogen, you have lots of mucus, my friends. And when you are older and you have less estrogen, you have less mucus. So what that means is that your bladder's ability to defend itself is compromised. It is different. So the foods that you might have been able to do 20 years ago, in your 30s, in your 40s, you might not be able to get away with in your 50s and 60s. That's not a disease process. That's really about the quality and health of your skin and the fact that you are now a bit estrogen compromised. And so we call that the genitourinary syndrome of menopause, or GSM. Alrighty. Hey, for those of you on Facebook, if you could let people know on your pages and in your IC groups that we're live, that would be great. So I would suggest, Betsy, I would suggest that you Google genitourinary syndrome of menopause. But basically all it means is now, because you have less mucus, irritants in your urine are getting where it's not supposed to get, which is causing superficial irritation, mast cells to release histamine, it's irritating nerves, bam, symptoms of frequency, urgency, pressure, pain. There you go. So if you're of that age, then what do? We're going to do things that might give you a little bit more estrogen, maybe a little bit of a vaginal estrogen cream so that your body can produce more mucus, along with a bladder coating effect, something like Cysto Renew or Desert Harvest Aloe, or Cysto Protect, a supplement that might give you another layer of protection in there. Alrighty. Okay. Boy, I like that question. Hello, Gigi. Hello, Pam. Hello, Jenny. Hi, Catherine. Thank you, Sean. I'm happy to be your advocate. Do many IC sufferers have lichen sclerosis? No, we don't have any data on that. What I can tell you though, so what's really interesting about lichen sclerosis is, number one, the name lichen kind of implies mold, and it's not. Lichen sclerosis is tissue that is massively inflamed, specifically at the neurological level. And so somebody with lichen sclerosis, their skin is white. You'll have a white vulva. You'll have white areas in there that can be very, very painful. We don't have any data that links IC with lichen sclerosis at all. Lichen sclerosis is pretty tricky to treat. My mother has lichen sclerosis, and generally they're going to probably give you some steroids as well as a little steroid cream, maybe a little bit of Relivium, which is an aloe with lidocaine cream, or a compounded lidocaine cream, or a compounded ketamine amitriptyline cream or amitriptyline baclofen cream, things that will calm that nerve down. And also, I just really want to say the single most important thing for you to do, Sean, if you struggle with lichen sclerosis, is use a perineal wash bottle. Remember that skin down there is incredibly inflamed, and any chemical touching that skin is going to provoke it and irritate it badly. And the challenge is when you pee and it drips across your vulva, you got irritants from that urine on your vulva, and toilet tissue is not going to get all those chemicals off, those molecules off, but water will. So you always rinse yourself off with water first and then pat dry, and that's a really good way of reducing chemical irritation on your vulva. Alrighty, so I would definitely tell you to do that. Carol says, everyone says I should drink cranberry juice. Carol, your answer back is hell no. No, you don't drink cranberry juice when you've got a damaged bladder wall. Cranberry juice, is kind of one of the old wives' tales that, yeah, if you have a bladder problem, you drink cranberry juice. But I will tell you, almost every research study has shown very little effectiveness with cranberry juice. And in fact, what we know about cranberry juice with somebody with IC or bladder wall injury is it's actually incredibly provoking because cranberry has lots of acid in it. I will tell you, in my first year of IC, before I was diagnosed formally or knew anything about it, I drank a quart of cranberry juice a day. I mean, I literally at my job, every day I brought in a quart of cranberry juice. And by the end of that day, I had drunk that. And because I was desperate to get better, what I did not see over time is that I got worse and worse and worse and worse until at the end of that year, I was basically at the emergency room every day. And in hindsight, what I realized is what may have started out as a moderate bladder injury for me became an extremely severe bladder injury because I was pouring acid on it every day. And if you had a wound on your hand, would you pour acid on it every day? And the answer is no. But what would happen if you poured acid on it every day? It would never heal, number one. Number two, it would probably get bigger. And I think that's what I did to my bladder by drinking a quart of cranberry juice a day for that first year. And it wasn't until I actually met a support group leader on the phone, because I thought, hello, back then, I thought I was the only patient in California who had it, who told me about cranberry. It was like, oh my God, oh my God. If only it's somebody again, I was thinking IC is disease. I wasn't thinking IC is injury back then. And we really now focus on the concept of injury in most patients, unless you're in that tiny subset of patients where you really might have a chronic infection of some type. Hello, Fort Sill. Yes, yes, yes. Hello, upstate New York. Hi, Selena. Hello, Renee. Hello, Pamela in Texas. Carol says she's really struggling with depression. You always have to pee, and you have IBS with diarrhea on and off for 2 weeks. I spend most of my time in the bathroom. All right, so Carol, we got to do the flare screen for you. We have to figure out the type of you have to figure out the type of flare that you're having. And so there's a really, really important question that you've got to ask yourself. When is your pain the worst? Before you pee, while you're peeing, or after you're done peeing? If your pain is worse before you pee and you feel better after you pee, then that tells me that your bladder wall is really provoked. If your pain is worse after you're done peeing, that tells me that your pelvic floor is really, really provoked. However, we have to ponder IC subtype 5, central sensitization. I have IC too. I have IBS too. I have vulvodynia too. I have very sensitive skin. I have a very sensitive stomach. These are hallmarks of somebody with central sensitization. So if you've got your bladder wall driving you crazy and your bowel driving you crazy, what we're going to try to do is focus on calming and soothing all of those nerves if at all possible. So number one, and we have to do them. We can't keep one angry and work on one. Got to work on both at the same time. So with your bladder, you got to go on your bladder protocol, right? So make sure you're drinking water, maybe alkalinize your urine a little bit, Tums or a little tiny bit of baking soda in a glass of water once a day, so that if there's anything acidic in your urine that's provoking you, that would be important. Make sure you're not doing some of those hidden bladder irritants like a multivitamin. If you're taking Centrum one a day, every day, those are really notorious for really provoking the bladder wall and keeping that nerve irritated and everything angry down there. Of course, if you think you have infection, do a dipstick test, ask for a urine culture, do the bladder health list. It's always good to rule that stuff out. And then for the bowel, and actually, to be quite honest, I've had an IBS flare for the last 10 days myself. And trying to figure it out is always challenging. I know mine started um, after I went to the farmer's market and I ate a whole bunch of unwashed blackberries. I mean, they looked really clean to me, and I ate a thing for breakfast of blackberries, and by that night I had the runs. Generally, with the bowel, and if your bowel is really provoked, the first thing we want to do is, again, we want to avoid those foods which we know are neurostimulatory, like chocolate and caffeine, and those things which will amp nerves up. They will generally tell you to only put things in your body which are easier to digest, soluble fibers. So sometimes you have to do the brat diet: bananas, rice, applesauce, and toast. Be really gentle for a couple of days. Let those nerves calm down. And then as you think about maintaining your bowel, we have to really make sure we got good beneficial bacteria in there, using a probiotic, using a prebiotic to try to restore any biological imbalance going on there, and also use some soluble fibers to give your body the fiber it needs to feed the beneficial bacteria. One product, let's see. One product that you might find really helpful, and this is a product that I use myself, is Heather's Tummy Fiber. Heather's Tummy Fiber, acacia fiber, organic acacia fiber, designed for irritable bowel syndrome. This is a completely soluble fiber that is much more gentle on your bowel. It's not going to provoke your bowel. Sometimes you get IBS after eating something which is really neurostimulatory, like caffeine or chocolate or uh, sometimes red meat. It can be really heavy and rough, or granola or cereal or even a salad. Most of my IBS attacks happened after eating salads. And that's because lettuce has very rough edges, and as it works through your body, it kind of tickles and irritates your bowel tissue, and then that kind of provokes the nerves, and that's what provokes the diarrhea. There is a website that I love called helpforibs.com. That is the website that led to the creation of this product. And they have, over on that website, they have a really just good discussion of fibers, as well as kind of a flare rescue plan. So I would encourage you, Carol, to go over there and try to learn about it too. But number one, you are so not alone. Okay, I'm just telling you right now, you are not in this alone. I have exactly what you have. You have done nothing wrong. None of this is your fault in any way, shape, or form. And I think that it's important for your emotional health to make sure that you're not beating yourself up. You're not thinking that you're damaged goods. You're no different than someone who is hit by a car. You're hurt. You're hurt. And so be gentle to yourself, be kind to yourself. If you're struggling with depression, if you're struggling with anxiety, there's no shame in asking for help. It's really comforting and good to just get it all out to somebody, whether it's a minister or a priest or a counselor or whatever, or a trusted friend. Sometimes you just need to let those emotions out. Um, what I see sometimes in patients is because I did it myself. It's like you get so anxious and so depressed, you start spinning in a circle and you can't stop yourself. It's just like negative thought after negative thought after negative thought after negative thought, and then you get sadder and sadder and sadder. And um, it's and a lot of that is just fueled by anxiety and kind of the chemical neural cascade that happens with anxiety. It's really important to let it out. So how do you let it out? What I did is I wrote when it was absolutely the worst for me. I wrote in a journal every morning before I got out of bed. I had a little spiral journal, 3 pages longhand. I just wanted to purge my body of any stress and any fear and any anxiety. I wanted to start the day clear. And then at the end of the day, again in bed, same notebook, I would write down everything that had bothered me. I would just get it out. Giving that a voice, getting it out of your body so that it's not holding you tight is really, really important. So, um, whether it's walking, whether it's swimming, whether it's writing, find a way to just let it go. Um, and a therapist or counselor can help that. There's good meditation, all sorts of stuff like that. I would be more than happy to talk to you too if you would like to call me and we can brainstorm a little bit about your health and maybe give you a little bit of an action plan that you can take back to your doctor to try to narrow this down as to why you're struggling to the degree that you are. Alrighty, my my phone number is, and so feel free to call me this week. I wasn't working yesterday because I didn't feel good. And today I'm just starting to feel a little bit better. Cold flu thing. Okay, 1-800-928-7496. Okay, it's right on the bottom of our website. ic-network.com is our phone number, right on our Facebook page. Feel free to call me and I would be more than happy to talk with you. Alrighty. Again, you're not alone. Give you a hug. Chris says, will diet soda set an icy bladder back even more than citrus related stuff? I believe it would because diet soda contains two strong acids, and a lot of diet sodas are citrus related anyway. They're both bad. Citric acid in citrus is one of the most provoking and irritating acids to the bladder. Throw in artificial sugar. Artificial sugar is often metabolized into formic acid, which is a precursor to formaldehyde. So you've got the formic acid induced irritation, you've got the citric acid induced irritation, and a lot of those drinks have ascorbic acid from vitamin C. So you're really drinking an acid stew when you're doing something like a sugar-free 7-Up or something like that. Gigi says, can we both have pelvic floor dysfunction from having years of bladder wall driven pain? Absolutely. It's called the guarding reflex. Seriously, whenever you're in pain, your body's going to try to protect you, and it protects you by tightening muscles. So here you've got a bladder that was screaming. So here you got your bladder is screaming, and of course your pelvic floor is going to hold on and it's going to get tight to protect it. That's a guarding reflex. The irony here is you might have actually healed your bladder, but now you're stuck with tight pelvic floor muscles. And I want to just, I noticed this when I was doing a meeting last week. So this is my example for your bladder. Here's my example for your pelvic floor. Look what happens when I squeeze it. It's white. When you squeeze it, you're restricting blood flow, right? You squeeze your arm right now, it gets white. Squeeze your hand, it gets white. That's what happens to your bladder. That's why tight pelvic floor muscles are so damaging in the long run because they're inhibiting, restricting blood flow to the bladder, and your bladder needs good blood flow to be healthy. Okay, so Gigi, absolutely, you are absolutely on. You can have pelvic floor dysfunction because after years of having bladder wall driven pain. Karen says, what is the sharp shooting pain in the bladder wall and up the vagina? It's excruciating. Karen, is it if the pain is shooting up your vagina, I really think that it's a muscle spasm of some type. Um, yeah, you did, and I'm sorry. You called me a couple days ago, and you're still on my to-do list. I unfortunately just really have been sick for a couple of days. I had the runs for a couple of days, and I woke up with a congested, and God, hello life. So I'm still back up on my phone calls. I think you have to rule stuff out, hun. We have to rule stuff out. The first thing you got to rule out is there any even a remote chance it's infection? And so if you got UTI test strips, please test your urine. That would be number one. Number two, the second thing we want to rule out is it bladder spasms? Because bladder spasms are sharp. Um, so a bladder, I want to I kind of want to demonstrate, but it's hard to demonstrate. So um, when I've had bladder spasms, so you're like sitting on the toilet, right? And you're like peeing, and then the last couple of drops come out, and it's like, oh, right? It's like, oh my god, and it shoots up your back. It almost engages your whole abdominal cavity. It's just a very sharp. Oh my god, what is that? And then you're on the toilet like this for you know 20, 30, 40 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes until that spasm relaxes. And if you think about the bladder, the bladder is it's like a balloon, right? So it gets bigger and bigger and bigger the fuller it gets. But when you pee, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And then eventually the walls touch. And it's often at the moment that the walls touch that you get that spasm, especially if the walls are damaged in some way, because then you got wound touching wound. So I don't know if you're having a bladder spasm. You could be having a bladder spasm. Um, the next thing we want to ask is, does it only happen when you're sitting down? So you're not getting that sharp pain as you're standing walking around, but as soon as you sit, it like shoots up there. That would be a pudendal nerve entrapment. Anytime your pain is positional, and movement triggers that pain, we're really going to be looking at muscles. And so, what would you do in that circumstance? We want to do a lot of heat. We want to do muscle relaxant, anything like that that can calm and soothe the pelvic floor. Um, I will tell you for me, and because hello, I'm an IC patient too, and you guys, I always have to qualify this by my own experience. I finally had that for the first time after my hysterectomy last year. A very sharp vaginal, except for me, it was like a hand up there that would then like grab any blood vessels or muscles. It was like grab it and pull it down. That was a levator muscle spasm. So I'm not really sure. It could be a pelvic floor spasm. It could be a bladder wall spasm. It could be pudendal neuralgia if it's happening as you're sitting or standing, hun. Okay. Gigi says, what about bladder ease? I was just looking at the bladder ease formula. Bladder ease, the challenge with bladder ease is it's just expensive. It's kind of outpriced itself. I think it's in the 60s, $60 range. When we've got, most people can't afford more than that. I will tell you that we're also working on a brand new supplement that I think you're going to love, love, love. Just got labels today. And my goal with our goal with the new one is to make it affordable. I want this new supplement to be in the 30s instead of in the 40s. I also want it to be heat tolerant. And so stay tuned in the next month or so. We're probably going to have a new supplement. I want to get it first and I'm going to take it myself, and we'll have some random people take it and try it. But that's my goal, is to get affordable things to you that are high quality, made in the United States. It will be all made and sourced in the United States also. Melissa, could IC be autoimmune or more common than those with autoimmune disease, such as Hashimoto's? My understanding of official autoimmune diseases is that there are 4 very strict criteria that must be met. IC does not, and again, you have to think about your subtype here. That's the problem. All that old research has to be repeated now, first sorting patients by their subtype. So is there a variant subtype that could be autoimmune? Sure. However, I also want to point out the chromosome 13 debacle. So, in fact, that's going to be a big article in my fall magazine that I should be writing right now, but I'm doing this instead. this happened about 15 years ago when they were mapping the human genome product, the human genome project. And it was anxiety researchers who, as they were trying to figure out which part of the human gene correlated with anxiety, who made what they thought was an amazing discovery. And that is, most of the patients they were working with had bladder problems. And it was very, very consistent. So then they came to the bladder community and they were stunned to find out that most of the bladder community had anxiety. And I remember Dr. Thea Harides was in our lecture series and we were talking about that. It was the study came out right before his lecture. So we spent part of that online event talking about that study. And so the question is, why would somebody have bladder issues and anxiety issues? And the answer comes back to a chromosome 13. Chromosome 13 is also involved with thyroid disorders. And chromosome 13 may actually be the central sensitization IC subtype 5 connection. So the theory here is that you have a section of DNA that controls anxiety. You have a section of DNA that controls bladder sensitivity, again for IC subtype 5. The theory here is that they slightly overlap so that when one gets activated, the other gets activated. That was the theory 15 years ago. And I'm not up to date on the new chromosome 15 stuff, but 13 stuff, but I plan to immerse myself in it for a couple of weeks this month as we work on this big feature story on it and try to talk with the new researchers. So is there a subtype that's autoimmune? Probably, but is everybody autoimmune? Absolutely not. And I think it would fall more in the IC subtype 5, central sensitization. Yeah, I think it's more there. Michelle says, is it normal for IC pain to get worse when you're ovulating? Absolutely. Absolutely. I had ovulation flares that first year every single month, and they were sharp, but they were short term. They only lasted 4 to 6 hours. And that's a nice thing. You know, when you start tracking your symptoms and you start seeing these really predictable flares when you ovulate a couple days before your period, it takes the fear and anxiety away. It's like, oh, okay, I'm ovulating, no biggie. I'm not, the sky is not falling. It is an ovulation flare. I know through history it's going to be over in 4 to 6 hours. We're good. So that is absolutely normal, and that is because your hormone levels are low. Your estrogen levels are low. Selena says, started Desert Harvest Aloe a week ago, praying it helps your symptoms, despite being... Everyone thinks it's a hoax, and just what? Are you kidding me? I don't know who's telling you it's a hoax. Desert Harvest is the only supplement company who's ever completed a very rare, very expensive, double-blind, placebo-controlled research study with IC to prove that their product helps IC. And that data was strong and compelling. Desert Harvest Aloe is not a hoax in any way, shape, or form. That's crazy. You know, one of the challenges with the FDA, again, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, the companies were allowed to put their research studies on their websites, but the FDA changed that about 7, 8 years ago. The companies are no longer allowed to put their own research studies that prove that a product helps on their website. So then that's up for somebody like you or me to pass that information along, or if you search the National Library of Medicine. I can tell you right now, anybody who's telling you that is completely uninformed, because we've got the published research study to back it up. It doesn't work for everyone, but it works for some people. The challenge with Elmeron, of course, is, and again, a way to look at it is with the American Urology Association treatment guidelines. So the AUA guidelines are a 6-step treatment protocol. You start at step 1, you do everything in step 1 before you go to step 2. You do everything in step 2 before you go to step 3, and so forth. And the steps are arranged with respect to the risk of adverse events. We don't want you to do dangerous stuff before we do easy stuff. We want you to do the easy stuff first, so that where the odds are it's not going to hurt you, rather than going to the big time stuff where there's a really, really good chance you could have a serious problem if you do it. So the American Urology Association places supplements in step 1 and Elmeron in step 2. Why? Because the supplements have far fewer side effects. And unfortunately, we now have the very tragic findings that Elmeron has now been associated in many patients. In fact, I just got an email from a brand new university who has just found it in more IC patients. Elmeron has now been associated with macular disease and retinal disease. So we're now got potentially three research centers, eye research centers doing this, and I'm trying to coordinate them and keep everybody together. And so I've never taken Elmeron. I have no intention of ever taking Elmeron. It was approved in 1996. I was diagnosed in 1993. I wanted to do other things. Elmeron is known for stomach ache, bowel distress, diarrhea, easy blood thinning, changes in liver enzyme levels, hair loss, uh, easy bruising, if I didn't say that already. And the challenge with Elmeron, too, if you ever have to have surgery, they will often want you to be off of it for a couple of 4 to 6 weeks, especially if it's a big surgery like hip replacement, because it can be a blood thinner. So anybody who's saying Elmeron is a piece of cake is ridiculous. There are other medications that are a hell of a lot easier than Elmeron that have a similar beneficial coating effect. Does it help some people? Elmeron does not help IBS at all. Elmeron would make IBS much, much worse because it's known for bowel issues. I don't know anybody who says Elmeron should be used for IBS. That's kind of wacky. Wackadoodle. And using an antihistamine for your bladder is great. That's good. That's good. As we ponder this, side view of the bladder. So here we've got a bladder wall that's missing its mucus. So irritants get down here into your superficial cells, and down here to your blood vessels and nerves. Scattered in and amongst here are mast cells. And when mast cells are irritated, they release histamine. And histamine is what makes mosquito bites turn red and swell. Histamines are bad. One of the ways that we describe IC is it's like 100 mosquito bites at once in your bladder. So using an antihistamine to control that mast cell process it can be very, very important. And I have where is it? That's not it. I have a good graph. Here it is. So let me show you one of the slides that are used. You got to understand that when doctors go to conferences, they take a lot of classes on IC and chronic pelvic pain. And so I'm going to show you a slide that has been used for a decade or longer, and it still works today. Okay. So, and I just don't know if you can read that or not, but let me just walk you through it real quick. So we have a bladder insult. Something has happened to the bladder. So as an example, let's just call it chemotherapy. The chemicals of the chemo have caused the skin of the bladder to be damaged. Because the skin of the bladder is damaged, urine can reach down deeper into those tissues. Urine, potassium, irritants, whatever. What does this do? It irritates nerves. It activates the C fibers and the release of substance P. Substance P is very damaging to tissue. When you get substance P floating into the bladder wall, it then causes more mast cells to release histamine. And you get stuck in this vicious cycle here, total vicious cycle. Mast cells trigger histamine, histamine irritates nerves, substance P irritates this. And that's why a lot of the treatments for IC, they're really designed to try to break up this vicious cycle of inflammation or irritation here. They give you the antihistamine to calm the mast cells down, and they give you the low dose antidepressant to try to calm the nerves down for IC subtype 2 bladder wall driven and for IC subtype 1 Hunter's lesions. Alrighty. All right, boy, and you know what, Selena? Seriously, for anybody telling you that Desert Harvest Aloe is a hoax, yeah, have them call me. I'll set them straight. I'm happy to do that. Dawn, it's called the genitourinary syndrome of menopause. GSM, genitourinary syndrome of menopause. Thank you, Gigi. Diane says Sister Renew is working for her and she recommends it highly. Awesome. Yeah, I like Sister Renew. It has 4 methods of action. Our new supplement's going to have 5 methods of action. But I think that right now on the market, the best supplement for methods of action where you kind of get more bang for your buck is Sister Renew. But we're all different. What works for one might not work for the other, and vice versa. And remember, too, again, I was working with this man with a terrible case of chemo-induced cystitis, and the very first thing I recommended to him was Desert Harvest Aloe. The Desert Harvest Aloe is really well known for being calming and soothing. Let's see. Hi, Marie. Selena's saying she started Claritin and aloe a week ago. Hydroxyzine is going to be sedating if you take it during the day. I took it for 10 years, and I took it at dinner time. A little tiny bit harder to wake up. It's like you have a little extra layer of sleep to break through, but once you're through, there's usually no sedative effect, but you never take hydroxyzine during the day if you're dealing with, if you have to be alert. Carol says she's had lidocaine installations, but they only hope for 2 to 3 weeks. Well, Carol, the fact of the matter is they're helping. And so what does that tell us? That tells us that either the bladder coating effect of the heparin is powerful or the nerve calming effect of the lidocaine is powerful. And so you now need to follow up on that. And so it would be interesting to maybe try a supplement with a coating effect, see if that's the marker, or, the nice thing about Sister Renew is it has a little bit of lemon balm in it, and lemon balm is known for kind of its nerve calming effects. But to me, the fact that it's successful for you, even if it is just for 2 to 3 weeks, is very telling and very revealing. And I would follow that line of thought and ask yourself, what is it doing and what can I keep doing to promote that method of action? Selena says, can people with IC eat yogurt or will it hurt our bladder due to the cultures? Cultures should not hurt. Live cultures are important. Yogurt used to be in the caution list. Now it's in the try it list in the IC diet. However, I think we're moving it up to the bladder friendly, as long as it's a bladder friendly flavor. I do a coconut yogurt. I like coconut milk plain yogurt or coconut milk blueberry yogurt. Do not do lemon, do not do chocolate, do not do anything like that. And of course, I'll also look at the sugars, because I will tell you, some of the yogurt makers are just, it's like eating a milkshake in a little tiny thing. There's so much sugar, so you got to really look at that brand. But their yogurt is not as bladder irritating as we first thought 20 years ago. Sherry uses Heather's tummy care. Great. Carol, rice gives you diarrhea. You've only been eating toast and tea. Wow, you must be allergic to rice. Go on over to Help for IBS, and they might have some good ideas for you on what you can do to try to get yourself out of that IBS flare. Alexa says, what's a good IC safe coffee or something to wake you up in the morning? We sell 3 low acid coffees on the IC network in our store. My favorite right now is Bella Rosa coffee. And the reason why I like Bella Rosa coffee is it has the lowest level of a very specific acid. I wrote a blog on it. Let me find it here. Hold on a sec. Let's see. Hold on one moment and let me give you the full information. Okay, so here's what's so interesting. Coffee has a lot of stuff in it, right? And clearly, coffee in general, besides the caffeine and all that other stuff, the coffee certainly has its share of acidic molecules. But there's a really interesting story. A new employee for the IC network was telling me about Bella Rosa coffee, which happens to be made in my county. I'd never heard of it before. And she said that it was the first coffee she could drink without hurting her stomach. And so I went over to their website and then I called them and I said, "This is so interesting. Why does your coffee not hurt so many people?" And he said, "Yeah, we were baffled. They designed a new coffee roaster, um, and unique for them. They trademarked it. They do it, and they noticed in their first year all these people contacting them saying, 'We don't know why we can eat your coffee, but we can absolutely eat drink your coffee, and it doesn't hurt us at all.'" And so they were so stymied and interested in that mystery that they then sent it to UC Davis to a coffee researcher, and that coffee researcher found that Bella Rosa coffee has the lowest level of chlorogenic acid in the industry. And chlorogenic acid is the most irritating acid in coffee. It's the one that's most associated with stomach distress and bladder distress. And for somehow in the Bella Rosa roasting process, their method decimates chlorogenic acid. And so that's the one that I think patients should start with. But we also have Tyler's low acid coffee, and we also have Simpatico low acid coffee. And it's really a question of taste and tolerance. We just got Tyler's K cups. I have not put them up in the store. Um, so you can try all of those. But we do have samples of Bella Rosa decaf that you can try if you want to try it. I think they're 99 cents or $2.99 for a pot of coffee. So how can you find this and how can you subscribe to our magazine? You want to come to our store website. I separate stuff. I believe in a divide and conquer strategy. So I don't keep our store on the IC network website. I keep it here instead. And you can get your memberships over here and your books and your coffee and all that sort of stuff. And your purchases here support everything that we do for IC. And I will tell you flat out, they're much cheaper, in some cases, $5 cheaper than the same items on Amazon, because Amazon has such a giant commission rate. So, or not commission rate, the percentage they take, they doubled. So now we have a lot of things that we sell in our store that are $5 cheaper than what you buy them on Amazon, including the supplements. Okay, all right, let's keep going. Does Bladder Ease work the same way as Sister Protect or Sister Renew? It has different ingredients in it. It has some of the same ingredients, but it has different ingredients also. And let me just look real quick. I have to refresh my memory here. So what's different about Bladder Ease, it's got one thing about Bladder Ease that I don't like is it's got bioflavonoids from citrus, and I think that's a mistake. But it's got vitamin A, it's got L-arginine, it's got quercetin, it's got glucosamine and corn silk and organ, but it doesn't have the most important ingredient, which is chondroitin, because it's the chondroitin that has the bladder coating effect. So Bladder Ease is a formula doesn't really make sense for somebody with a bladder wall issue. I think it's a real serious mistake in their formula, to be quite honest. Sherry, good luck with your rescue. That's a good formula. I just put a whole bunch of formulas for rescue installations on our main website. If you want to see the different formulas the different doctors look, just go to the treatment area, bladder installations, and there's a link on that. Hello, John from Wisconsin. Hi, Cookie. Linda, yes, it is archived. We are simulcasting on both YouTube and Facebook. This is one of my drop-in meetings that I don't announce ahead of time. What are my thoughts on medical marijuana? I completely support medical marijuana, 100% support it. And the reason why I support it is because in the state of California, our state legislature, before they approved it, did an exhaustive review of the research. And I read that research and it was stunningly good. So the research behind medical marijuana in terms of reducing pain, reducing relaxing muscles, helping cancer patients eat, and getting an appetite back is undeniable. Medical marijuana is valid and valuable for some, but not all patients. The question is, what should you get? Edibles, vapes, etc. Um, Edibles seem to be the preferred choice. We certainly don't want, smoking is going to put a lot of extra smoking byproducts in your urine, so we really don't want to do that. And also the suppositories. And in fact, in our magazine, this was our summer magazine, we highlighted the IC course in depth that they taught. And one of the instructors specifically mentioned a brand name medical marijuana called Fairwinds Cannabis. And Fairwinds Cannabis has infused vaginal suppositories that they call Feminine Relief and rectal suppositories that they call Rectify. So in this era now where pain patients, legitimate pain patients, are being taken off of their pain meds and putting patients right back into an intense pain, I think it's a tremendous gift that we have marijuana as an option. April, can you have more than one subtype? Yes, I'm IC subtype 5, IC subtype 3 primary, means I have central sensitization, I've got pelvic floor dysfunction, specifically my left piriformis, and I am bladder wall secondary, which means I don't have bladder wall symptoms every day, but every now and then they emerge if I do something I shouldn't do. Cindy is doing installations for about 10 weeks, working great. Awesome, glad to hear it. Mary, is it normal to have IC along with fibro, rheumatoid arthritis, and osteo? Yeah, but it's a small subtype. It's not the central sensitization subtype. It might be that autoimmune subtype. We just don't quite have that yet. We don't have that fleshed out quite yet. Stacy, yeah, Elmeron's notorious for causing gut distress. So I've never heard of anybody prescribing Elmeron for irritable bowel syndrome ever. Hello, Vicki from Albany, Georgia. I'm just going through your questions, guys. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them, both on Facebook and YouTube. Let me go down to YouTube. Lisa says, oh, Lisa, hun, I'm so sorry. Lisa just went to her mother's funeral. Oh, hun, if I could give you a hug, I would. That's that's so difficult. So you've got the hydrocodone. The hydrocodone is helping you. But again, we have to ask our question: when is your pain the worst? Before you're peeing or after you're done peeing? Your pain is worse before you're peeing, as your bladder fills with urine and relief by urination. That points to your bladder wall. So we need to do bladder wall coating things. If your pain is worse after you're done peeing, that's your pelvic floor being tight and stressed. And then you're going to be doing muscle relaxant things, heat. I would, at a minimum, be taking 2 hot showers, hot baths a day to try to relax your muscles. It might be interesting to do a little bit of a muscle relaxant if you feel that your muscles are super tight. But, hun, you're grieving right now, and you're going to be grieving for some time. And so the best thing you can do is comfort yourself. Don't give yourself, don't expect yourself to do big things right now. You've got to go through that grieving process and get the comfort that you need from your family and your pets and your friends, and talk to your doctor. Let your doctor know that you're grieving. Your doctor might say this might be a good time to do a little bit of an antidepressant or something like that, maybe, or just something that might relax you a little bit more. Hey guys, quick bio break. 15 seconds. Everybody, if you need to go pee, do it. I'm going to go do it. I'll be right back. Hey man, girls got to do what a girl's got to do, right? So one of the cool things about doing online support group meetings is you can get up whenever you need to get up. It's harder for me. I hate to leave an empty screen, but a girl's got to do what a girl's got to do. All right, just going through your stuff right now. Carol's drinks Puro's coffee. Have you heard about it? Yeah, hun, we used to sell it. It's just the reason why we don't sell it is because it's being sold in a lot of stores now. I mean, it's definitely up there. I would say I'd put it in the top five. I wouldn't put it in the top three, but I'd put it in the top five. Tyler's organic acid-free coffee is great. Amazon or Tyler's. You know, the challenge with Tyler's coffee is, yeah, they say acid-free, but it's really not acid-free. It's not a perfect pH 7. It is slightly acidic. And it's one of the things Tyler and I have talked about. Tyler is a great guy, and it's a great company. And is it possible for coffee to be completely acid free? I don't think so. There's always going to be a little tiny bit of acid in it, but we sell it. I like it. Um, April loves Bella Rosa often. Awesome. Where do you get the the fiber for this? You get it here. Come to our store. We sell it. You know, guys, everything we sell, I mean, I never thought I would have a shop. I mean, I'm an educator, but it became very crystal clear that patients needed a place where they could buy stuff that was IC friendly, and there wasn't anything like that. And so, as part of the IC network, we just slowly started selling books, and then heating pads, and then chair cushions and stuff like that. And so, I really like selling the coffee. I think it's cool. Adam says a high alkaline diet has helped to lessen your pain, but not completely. I also suffer. Well, hun, I would not expect an alkaline diet to reduce your pain in any way, shape, or. I mean, it's not going to cure IC. There's a kind of this mistaken impression that I quote unquote IC is because of an overly acidic body. That could not be farther from the truth because we're subtyping now. However, one thing we all have to admit is food today in this country is incredibly acidic, and we're often eating foods that are not good for us, and we're exposed to very high levels of acid in our diet, and so making an attempt to reduce that acid is, I think, important. But I mean, one of the things that I say is if you had a wound on your hand, would you pour coffee with pre-leaf on the wound? And the answer is no, of course not. You would let the wound heal. And so we have never been a fan of doing high alkalinity all the time because that's just not biologically normal. In my chemist, when I was getting my chemistry degrees, one of the very first things they taught us was the safety of alkaline products versus acidic products. And whenever we worked in the lab, we wore glasses. Why? Because if you spilled bleach in your eyes, it could blind you. If you spilled sulfuric acid in your eyes, it could blind you. Sulfuric acid is extremely acidic, bleach is extremely alkaline. So the problem is that when you're going high alkaline all day, you're basically doing the equivalent of putting diluted bleach in your bladder, which can be harmful. If you spill bleach on your finger, it gets slippery. That's the bleach dissolving your skin cells. We don't want that to happen to your bladder. So don't go over the top drinking alkaline water. I mean, if you want to have one a day, I don't have a problem with one a day, but only drinking alkaline water, I think is a terrible mistake. Linda says, where can I get the steps that you mentioned? Linda, on our website and in the AUA guidelines. So here, hold on. Let's see here. I think everybody should print out the AUA guidelines for IC. They're fabulous. They're the best thing that's happened to IC in the last 20 years. Go to auanet.org. In the upper right-hand corner is a link called Guidelines. Click on the guidelines, auanet.org, click on the guidelines, and then you'll be on the guideline page. Then you have to search for interstitial cystitis. So search for that. You'll take you to the IC guidelines and print those out straight from the Urology Association. Print out 3 copies, one for you. And seriously, read the whole thing and highlight it, for God's sake. Read it, because number one, the guidelines are backed up with all the research studies. But number two, the guidelines are really compassionate when it comes to pain care. So if you're struggling with pain and you're struggling with doctors who don't believe you're in pain, having those guidelines is essential, because it talks about the pain, the intensity of the pain, and it supports the use of opiate medication if necessary, along with other pain management strategies. So print out one for you, print out one for your urologist, print out one for your pain doctor if you have a new pain doctor. And frankly, carry one in your car. If you go to the emergency room, hand it there. It will educate more people than anybody else. So that's where you'll find the 6 steps of treatment. They're summarized on our website. I also have a video on it on our website. Hello, Barb. Gigi says, what if it hurts before and after? That means you're probably having a little bit of both, hon. It means that your bladder wall is probably pretty provoked, and your pelvic floor might be provoked too, because that's what happens. You know, your bladder hurts, your muscles get tight. And so you got to tackle both at the same time. You got to relax your muscles and you got to calm your bladder down. Lane, the tea that I was drinking is a pumpkin spice tea, and let me get it for you so you can see it. Hold on. Harney and Sons pumpkin spice tea. This is, and we sell it in our store. I actually found it at Barnes and Noble about 4 or 5 years ago, and I just looked at it and went, "Oh, that's interesting," because I like chai tea, but I can't drink it because I can't drink the caffeine. And I thought maybe it would be kind of like chai tea, and it's very mild and it's not very pumpkiny, but it's just perfect. So again, we have this in our store. We also have big refill bags. Um, and I just go, I mean, I have a cup a day. Carol has 2 rescue kittens helping her. I know I lost my kitty last year. In fact, if you could see some of the old pictures, normally when my cat was 19 when she died, she would be in my lap right now while we were doing this. She spent almost every day in my lap in the afternoon or somewhere here. Or you'd see her tail walking across. She's a sweet little kitty cat. I miss her. Carol, any teas that you recommend? Actually, I just read a blog that had a really interesting. Here, it's right here. They had a really interesting summary of herbal teas that I really agreed with. Let me read these off to you because I was going to reuse part of it and adapt it and stuff. So it was a fall blog on fall foods, but they did a whole thing on teas. So here's what they said. Chamomile tea is most commonly known for its calming effects and is frequently used as a sleep aid. Chamomile is well known for calming properties, and preliminary evidence supports this. It may also help relieve PMS symptoms, high blood lipid. Anyway, I don't know what her supporting facts are, but I'm going to agree with that. Chamomile herbal tea is the go-to for us. Peppermint tea is also the go-to, especially for the bladder and the bowel, unless you have GERD. If you have GERD, that's another story. Ginger tea has worked for some people. We used to sell a gingerbread spice celestial seasoning tea. Hibiscus tea tends to be a little bit on the acidic. I would definitely avoid that. Echinacea tea, you'll have to try it. I'm not an echinacea girl. Rooibos tea, we have found to be very gentle for the bladder, and it seems to work very well. Lemon balm tea also would be someone that you could potentially try, known for its nerve calming effects. I would stay away from rosehip teas. I would stay away from all green teas, all black teas, anything that's caffeinated. Okay. But so chamomile, peppermint, rooibos, lemon balm would be the ones I think that would be the worth trying. Lucy, you read the guidelines? Good job. Good job. Karen, if I'm exposed to caffeine, I will shake for about 36 hours. And then I will have wicked IBS. I will be empty in an hour with the caffeine because caffeine is neurostimulatory. It turns those nerves on. That's why people do coffee, is because it helps them have a bowel movement. But if you got IBS or IC or a sensitive nervous system, caffeine is like a jackhammer on our nerves. It goes crazy. Mary says, why does your stomach swell? Your stomach swells. We call that the IC belly. We asked Dr. Theoharides about that, and he believed that that was just really kind of a transitory sign that the bladder is very irritated and or perhaps some sort of very short-term inflammatory process. You wake up with a flat belly. By the end of the day, you look 6 months pregnant. You wake up the next morning with a flat belly. Usually not worrisome. I will tell you, I don't have, yeah, I gotta take that back. Um, uh, I stopped having IC belly a decade ago. I just don't get it anymore because my bladder's really good and my bowel's been pretty good for the most part. Yeah, until my hysterectomy. Yeah. Now we have a belly, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Leslie says she swells with gluten, and that's true. I swell with gluten too. I will swell up like a stuck pig if I eat pasta, wheat pasta, which is why I don't eat wheat pasta or white bread very often. I definitely swell up, but it goes away after about 24 hours. Lisa is in the United Kingdom. She's asking about the frequency of installations. The doctor wanted her to have a 4-week break. Well, I don't know why. It'd be interesting to find out his reasoning for that because I will tell you, many patients are taught to do self catheterization at home, and they do it every day at home. Some patients do it a couple of times a day if they've got a really, really badly damaged bladder. So I don't necessarily understand that reasoning for that. Um, but if you're trying to have a baby, you really have to ponder the risk versus benefits of doing something like that. There's only been one research study with IC and pregnancy and medications and what the impact of medications would be on pregnancy. You can find that in the IC Network Pregnancy Resource Center. It was done by Deborah Erickson at the University of Kentucky. I would strongly encourage you to actually buy that research study. We have a link to it and give it to your OBGYN so that you guys have your eyes wide open about the potential risk versus benefits. As an example, um, uh, what that study recommended with rescue installations is normally when you have a rescue installation, you've got heparin, you've got lidocaine, and you've got a little bit of sodium bicarbonate. And it's that sodium bicarbonate which alkalinizes the liquid, which improves absorption. And what Deborah Erickson said in her article is for people who are pregnant to not use any sodium bicarbonate to minimize absorption that could get to the fetus. So I would absolutely go to our website, go to the Pregnancy Resource Center. You'll see a link right there to the Erickson study. Might cost you $25 to get that article because you have to buy it from the journal. But you need to do that so that you understand risks, okay? Right? Your IC is bladder wall driven after an infection. Okay. The other thing I would do, I mean, seriously, if you think it was driven by an infection, if you can order that next generation test, why not? Let's make sure it's not an infection they missed, right? Margot says, what is Cysto Protect? Cysto Protect and Cysto Renew and Desert Harvest Aloe are over-the-counter supplements that are often used by IC patients for their bladder health. Cystoprotect was invented by IC researcher Dr. Theo Harris Theoharides at Tufts University almost 20 years ago. He's a federally funded IC researcher, pharmacologist. It's a very interesting story. He was doing research for the state on the safety of supplements. And as he was doing that research, Dr. Theoharides is a fabulous man, but he's a geek's geek. He's a real scientist. His specialty is pharmacology. He's a doctor, teaches at the medical school, works in the medical school, and is a researcher. But he loves the science of drugs. So as he was pursuing that research on supplement safety for the state and looking at their methods of action, he was like, "Oh, wait a second! I wonder if this could help IC." And he was so compelled by that and by the data that he was seeing that he actually did create a supplement line, and Cystoprotect is his flagship. Thousands of patients have used Cystoprotect very successfully, myself included. It is considered an option for Elmeron for people who cannot tolerate Elmeron or cannot afford Elmeron, although it is indeed a food supplement. And as a food supplement, they are not allowed to make any claims about diseases. All they can say is it's for bladder health. So there are three dominant supplements. Cystoprotect. And let me just clarify right here, if you're buying Cystoprotect in America with a lavender label, you are not buying the right Cystoprotect. It should be the turquoise label. You're getting stuck in a licensing ploy. This is the one that's licensed for sale in the United States. If you're outside of the United States, you can go to algonaut.com and buy the international version there. All right. So you should always be buying the turquoise version of Cystoprotect. Cysto Renew was invented by Dr. So the story here is, so this is an older formula. It's still a very, very popular formula. Has two methods of action, a bit of a bladder coating effect from chondroitin and sodium hyaluronate, combined with an antihistaminic effect from quercetin and an olive kernel oil base. This has been very, very popular over the years. We had been hoping that Dr. Theoharides would be creating his next generation supplement because, in fact, he told me he was going to do that like 15 years ago or 12 years ago. But he's moved on. He's doing other things now. He's working with autism now. So a new doctor, Dr. Gio Espinosa, who's a director of integrative urology for New York University, he created the next generation supplement called Cysto Renew. And this is, in my opinion, a better supplement. And it is a better supplement because it has four methods of action. It has four potential ways of helping you. So it has chondroitin for the bladder coating effect, just like Cystoprotect. It has quercetin, just like Cystoprotect. But it has aloe in it. It has a little bit of aloe in it for the soothing effect of aloe, just like Desert Harvest. It has a lemon balm in it for the soothing effect on the nerves of the lemon balm. And so this has four potential ways of helping you. Okay, so, and again, we're working on a new supplement that's going to be a time release combination of these that I hope will be out sooner rather than later, that I think is going to be the best. And our goal is to, because these are all in the high 40s, our goal with the new supplement is to try to get it in the $30 price range because money's hard for so many people, myself included. Leslie takes pre-leaf, excellent, and it works for you. Mary Jo says, be careful with the pre-leaf because it can make calcium flow into the blood. And that's true also. You shouldn't take pre-leaf if you have any calcium issues. Stacy, yeah, I think I saw your comment. Hun, I don't know. I don't know what the bioavailability of Elmeron is. I don't remember that. I know that Dr. Theoharides and Dr. Parsons appeared at the same conference, the San Diego IC conference, where they talked about that. And generally, you do a one-on-one substitution. So if you're taking 4 Elmeron, what they said is do 3 Elmeron and 1 Cystoprotect for a week, see how you do. If you do okay, go to 2 and 2. If If you do okay, go to 1 and 3, and so forth, and kind of do a gradual transition. And that way, you always still have a little bit of that bladder coating effect in there. Again, valuable if you're IC subtype 2. Stacy, at one point, suppliers were out of a sodium bicarbonate solution doctors prescribed. Be interesting to know what it was. Yes, there was a national shortage of bicarb. Kelly has asked for any advice with pregnancy. You're 28 weeks and started noticing your IC getting worse at 21 weeks. It's a constant urge to urinate with pressure that does not go away. Kelly, number one, look at your vitamin. Are you taking a vitamin for your pregnancy? It may be that the vitamin that you're taking is just a bit too irritating for your bladder. And if it's uh, that would be the first real big thing that I would be thinking about is, are you taking a prenatal vitamin that is provoking your bladder in some way? It's kind of a 50-50. Half the people, and first of all, understand that I see patients have babies all the time. And you're going to be a fantastic mother. And I wish you the best. And I don't want you to worry about that at all. I see patients, we have two pregnancy journals on our websites of IC patients who documented their pregnancy week by week. And you might find that very interesting as well. Um, it's going to be a little bit of both. I mean, depending upon how your baby is situated, your baby certainly could be putting pressure on your bladder. But I have a book you need to get. Hold on. Oops. Stay. Girl, this is the book for you. Ending Pain in Pregnancy by Isa Herrera. This just came out last year. And this can help you with pelvic muscle pain, all that sort of stuff. So, Ending Pain in Pregnancy by Isa Herrera is the best resource I have for you, hun. Okay? Teresa says, what supplement can I take to help build up the bladder wall if you're allergic to shellfish? What you need is a chicken-based chondroitin or a chicken-based sodium hyaluronate. It's the glucosamine, I think, that comes from the shellfish. But there are two sources of chondroitin, shark fin or cow trachea or from chicken. So we don't want the shark fin because it's a terrible industry. We don't want the cow trachea because of the risk of mad cow disease. Ironically, it is banned, in the slaughterhouse. What do you do with the trachea? Well, somebody figured out that trachea is high in chondroitin. But in Europe, they actually banned the use of cow trachea for chondroitin because of the risk of mad cow disease. How do you separate the nerves from that in the slaughter process? Amazingly, Americans, they send it all to America because our FDA is screwed up. So you have to really be very clear about the source of the chondroitin or the source of the hyaluronate. Those would be the two. You'll have to do some work. I think on our I know our new supplement is not going to have any shellfish in it at all. You can come to our store. I think we had hyaluronate. Let me look. We do. So we have hyaluronate from Douglas Labs, and it is a non-animal source. So there you go, right on the IC Network website, they say a non-animal source. And out of an abundance of caution for you, I would be so bold as to call Douglas Labs and verify that they consider shellfish an animal. If you're really that sensitive. But that would be the one that I would look at, maybe the Douglas Labs hyaluronic acid. Don't worry that it says acid. It's just the form of the molecule. It is not acidic to the bladder. It's also called sodium hyaluronate. Again, it just depends upon the actual molecule. It's like calcium citrate versus calcium carbonate. They're just various forms. Linda, your brother has a machine that makes water more alkaline for his kidney stones. That means he must have uric acid kidney stones as compared to calcium oxalate kidney stones. If you have uric acid kidney stones, your goal is to reduce acid level. But if you've got calcium carbonate kidney stones, you actually do more acid because you're trying to dissolve the calcium in the carbonate. I mean, the calcium in the oxalate. So I don't think so, hon. I think you should just drink spring water. Teresa says, what's the best doctor to see in or near central New York? We have a database on our website. The best doctor in the state of New York is Robert Moldwin out on Long Island. Jennifer says she's been on Elmeron for 7 months and she's not noticing a difference. Should I have less pain now? Wondering if I should still take it or not. So when Dr. Parsons appeared in a lecture on our website, somebody asked him the question, will I take Elmeron for the rest of my life? His answer was no. What we have to know is it helping you? So how do we figure out if it's helping you? And what he said is gradually reduce the dose. So if you take 4 a day, he said take 3 a day for a week. See if you get worse. If you do, it's helping you. If you don't, maybe not. Then go to 2 a day. See if you get worse. If you don't, then maybe it's not helping you. Go to 1 a day. That's exactly the way that the guy who invented Elmeron suggested that patients solve that question. Julie West, is bladder ease the same thing? No, bladder ease is missing an important ingredient, chondroitin, which is why we don't suggest it. Mary Jo says, sometimes I've heard that pregnancy helps IC to feel better. That is very true. And some patients, including a good friend of mine, Marie, who's in my support group, she had very, very severe pain until she got pregnant. Then her pain went away and it was really miraculous. And that does happen to some patients. Brittany says she asked about questions the other day about rectal spasms that you talked to Dr. Evans and was wondering if you could call me to get some natural ideas. Sure, if it, more than happy to call me. Post hysterectomy, we got to talk. Yeah, yeah, you call me for sure. Call me tomorrow. My number is, yeah, let's talk. I feel like I want to start a whole hysterectomy network, except there's already a hysterectomy network called Hyster Sisters that I used myself. But you can, Brittany, call me 1-800-928-7496 tomorrow or so, and let's go over it. Hi, Connie from Vermont. Very nice to see you. Margot, what's the best doctor in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania? I do not have a freaking clue. You'll have to check our database. If you're, I know that in Pennsylvania, you've got Dr. Robert Eckenberg, who is considered the best pelvic pain doctor in the nation. And so if you happen to be close to him, that'd be great because he's really dedicating his career to educating providers on the different sources of pelvic pain, reproductive, muscle, bladder, and all that sort of stuff. Diana says, where do you think of Botox for pain, incontinence, or frequency? Botox is a step 4 treatment option in the AUA guidelines. Botox comes with significant risks, and the risks are that you kind of have to, okay, so what is Botox? Botox is botulinum toxin, a deactivated botulinum toxin. So if anybody who ever heard of botulism, if you get botulism, bad things happen. You can die from it because it kills nerves and you just die. It's pretty bad. So what they've done is they've deactivated the botulinum toxin and made it so that it can kill nerves, but it doesn't go through the rest of the body. And so Botox has been used for TMJ. It's been used here and here. They've used it in different parts of the body, including in the bladder. So here's your bladder, right? So here's your bladder. Now, your nerves, the nerves they're squiggly. They go all over the bladder wall, right? And they don't necessarily have a set pathway. I mean, there's a general set pathway, but they move. I mean, they might be 2 millimeters to the right or 2 millimeters to the left or whatever. So when you have a Botox therapy, the question is where they inject it. And what they do is they're just kind of random, like here, 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 here. They'll just put it in random spots. And if they accidentally hit the nerve that controls your ability to pee, it will turn off that nerve for 3 months and you will not be able to pee on your own. It's called urinary retention. Thus, you will have to self catheterize until the Botox wears off. And so, the biggest risk for Botox is that it may make it difficult, if not impossible, for you to pee if they accidentally hit the wrong nerve. So, in the guidelines for the use of Botox, the number one criteria is this patient capable of self catheterizing? If not, then you are not a candidate for Botox, which is uh, a rule that's being broken massively in elderly patients, patients who are in rest homes and things like that. Some are doing Botox, despite the fact that these patients have no ability to self catheterize at all, and some would consider that an ethical breach or a medical care breach of some way. The other issue with Botox is that it can become, uh, if they accidentally inject a blood vessel, it can actually come up to your lungs and make it difficult for you to breathe. And I actually worked with a patient who 5 hours after her Botox therapy stopped breathing, and she was intubated for 2 weeks in the ICU while they were breathing for her as they were waiting for the Botox to wear off. So that's why it's in step 4. It has some pretty significant risks. It would be useful for you to look at some of the other step 4 options like urgent PC, the ankle nerve stim. Hello, Emma from Australia. Yeah, hold on a sec. I just have to refresh my memory. So, drugs have different names in different countries, and I just have to, I mean, I certainly know that name. So let me look at this real quick. I don't know if it is hyaluronic acid or chondroitin sulfate. Oh, it came. Ah, okay. So this is cool. You should. In my opinion, I think it's a really good thing to try. So, in Canada and Europe, not in the United States, but in Canada and Europe, going back to the 1990s, we've had dueling companies. So, one company called BioNiche in Canada had a bladder coating treatment called Cystitis that was hyaluronic acid or sodium hyaluronic, which of course is an ingredient in Cystoprotect, right? We know sodium hyaluronate or hyaluronic acid is naturally in the human body. It is a lubricant, it is a component of the bladder wall. So the theory was if you put hyaluronic acid in the bladder, perhaps that can act as an extra coating. And they were right. And Cystitis was very quickly approved in Canada and in Europe. And that was the name of it was Cystitis. It was not FDA approved in the United States because it did not meet the criteria for FDA approval. Their research study they did in the United States was not quite good enough. Then we had another bladder coating therapy developed that was based on chondroitin, and that is called Uracyst. Again, approved in Canada and Europe. And its data was really so it used chondroitin, which is also a molecule in a building block, a glycosaminoglycan building block in the bladder wall. And their research was equally effective as the cystatin one. So you have these dueling treatments, right? And the companies really tried to undercut each other. It's like these guys were going to prove their product worked, and these guys were going to prove their product worked, and man, they fought like dogs for a decade or longer. And then someone in Europe, I don't know who, put them together. And they put chondroitin and hyaluronic together as a bladder coating. And you know what? It was better than both. And so that has been the one of the dominant treatments in Europe is this combination of chondroitin and cystitis as a bladder coating. And the name of it is Ilaril, what you just asked for, Emma. So if you're IC subtype 2 bladder wall driven, yeah, absolutely worth trying. It looks pretty good. I hope that the company and I don't even know it gives us the name of the company. Well, the name of the company is Ilaril. It would be nice if they were willing to go through the US FDA approval process, but it's a very, very expensive to do that. So yeah, she's right, and I think that that's a reasonable coating. But seriously, if you're drinking coffee or tea every day, it's not going to work because it's going to wash it out. So you really got to follow your diet too. Protect your bladder. Create an environment that will support healing. If you're drinking coffee or soda and doing a bladder coating, you're completely avoiding it. You're minimizing it because the acid is just going to wash out whatever you're putting in your bladder that's trying to help your bladder. Sandy, is Neurontin safe to take? I was just diagnosed with central sensitization. You know what? It would be very wrong for me to tell you that it's safe, and it would be very wrong for me to tell you that it's unsafe. It's really about your unique case and what your doctor says and what would work with your specific body. So you have to talk to your doctor, and you got to talk to your pharmacist, learn about the side effects, and maybe start with a very, very low dose if you want to try it. And here's Diana who says she takes it and takes her pain away. So I think it's valid and valuable. Brittany says hysterectomy threw you for a loop. Yeah, seriously, 15 months later for me, and it's still baffling. Margot, you're only 15 minutes from Dr. Eckenberg. Count yourself lucky and blessed. He's a lovely man. Just going through your questions here. Tracy, how do I feel about Interstem? I am not happy with Interstem. Interstem has a place. Interstem is Interstem is neuromodulation, and what that means is by delivering the theory behind it is if you deliver a consistent dose of stimulation to nerves in the pelvis, that perhaps any dysfunctional nerves in the pelvis that are involved with the bladder will behave normally. Interstim was invented at UC San Francisco. I was a patient at UC San Francisco. I also ran the support group for all the early Interstim patients who did that back in the 1990s. I was a patient in the summer of 1993 where they were just kicking it off and getting started. Um, in the early days, Interstim was brutal because the leads would move. The company did not recommend using anesthesia for the trial. I had patients screaming bloody murder, traumatized, screaming their heads off. I had one mother describe hearing her son screaming as they were doing the Interstim trial, begging them to stop. And it was in part my meeting with the company after that that compelled them to create some anesthetic guidelines for the trial. That said, it's now 20 years later. Interstim is, as a device, is much better. The protocols are much better. The devices are smaller. The leads are better. The leads don't move as much. However, if you were to review the MOD database at the FDA, and it's something that I do at least once or twice a year, you will find hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of severe adverse events with Interstim. So let's do that right now. I want to do that right now. Let's see. Let's just see what's happening with Interstim side effects right now. So I am searching for FDA mod, like the old TV show, MAUDE database. So I'm going to that page right now. And I wish I could screen share, but I can't screen share. All right. So I'm now on it was the first link. And so I'm on the US FDA page. And now I'm going to put in the brand name Interstim. And I'm going to search just for the last year from 9/1/2018 to 9/30/2017. And let's look at what we see. Oh, wait a second. Hold on a sec. Did I do this wrong? That's not right. Hold on. I'm searching wrong. Oh, let's see. No wonder. I'm searching backwards. Hold on. All right. Last year. First one, report filed 9/29. Let's look at it. A consumer filed a complaint about Interstim, but they did not write down and it was a malfunction. All right, let's go to the next one. A health professional filed a complaint, and in this case, the device moved. The device moved out of position. Okay, the third one. Injury. The device moved and caused an injury. The fourth one. Okay, this is interesting. Information received from a healthcare provider via the manufacturer's representative that reported that a patient suddenly came into the clinic site before their scheduled follow-up visit for a skin lesion on the neurostimulator battery. It was reported to be erosion. Factors may have led to or contributed to the issue remain unknown. Interventions included a surgery. She had to have surgery, and a surgical intervention occurred. Okay, here's another good one. Information. So again, this was just filed on September 28th, and I'm telling you, people, there are hundreds of these. So this was filed by, who is this filed by? The manufacturer, which is, okay, that's very interesting. Information was received from a consumer regarding a patient who was implanted with a neurostimulator. It was reported that the patient started having a painful burning sensation and bowel movements. The patient had had the implant since 2011. During troubleshooting, it was indicated that the patient was unable to power up the programmer and needs batteries. The patient didn't have batteries during the report. Afterward, the patient called back with new batteries to troubleshoot. The programmer was able to turn it on. It was indicated that stimulation was at 1.2. The patient assisted, yada, 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 yada. Anyway, there's more here. This is long. The doctor wanted to do a lot of experiments with the settings. The patient explained that the healthcare provider wanted the patient to increase stimulation under program 3 each week to a comfortable level, and then to switch 4. The patient didn't have a booklet. The patient was then walking. While on the call, the patient was walking through syncing the programmer with the Interstim. Patient was then, yeah. Anyway, come over to the mod database. If you're thinking about Interstim, you need to read a couple hundred of these. I mean, read a lot of them. Here's a patient. The next one, patient fell and the wires moved. Let's just go through a couple more of these. There's another malfunction. These are all reports filed on the same day. There's another malfunction. Here's a patient who was implanted with it for a urinary dysfunction and for her pelvic floor. Is reported the patient was up the morning of, and there was a date, was not able to urinate, and it burned and was in a lot of pain. Patient also stated they have a feeding tube and filled her system up with liquid, but she was not able to urinate it out. The programmer would not work for her. Um, anyway, we don't even know what happened. So Interstim has a place. If you were completely incontinent, if you were fecally incontinent and bladder incontinent, Interstim could change your life for the better. But you got to do a lot of preparation and research if you're considering Interstim because there are a hell of a lot of potential side effects. You're looking at a minimum of two surgeries. You got to have the surgery to implant the lead. You might have to have surgery to replace to move the lead if the lead, if the device malfunctions. You might have to have another surgery to replace the batteries. You would have to have another surgery to remove the device if the device failed. Um, One of the things that we see with Interstem is if you lose your healthcare coverage, it might be difficult for you to find another doctor. We had one case of a woman in Florida who had Interstem. She lost her wonderful health insurance at work. She was stuck on Medicaid, and her doctor dropped her. And the thing about Interstem, as they all say, is it requires constant medical attention. And so, one of the really important questions to ask your doctor is, "Hey, if I lose my insurance, will you still cover me? If I lose my insurance and my device starts to malfunction, can I count on you to see me and help me since you're putting this in my body?" And if they say no, I would really deter me. The other thing about Interstem is that it's really, really important that you get your facts straight and in writing about who's paying for it. And here's another real story. So we had a nurse who she lived in a small town, I think in Virginia. There were three urologists. All three urologists agreed she would have Interstim. She didn't want to have it done, but she kind of felt like she was being pushed into it, that they wouldn't treat her if she didn't have it done. So she did what she thought was her due diligence. So the first thing she did is she asked the doctor's insurance carrier, "Am I covered for this insurance, for this procedure?" And the doctor's insurance specialist said, "Absolutely, you are covered. No problem at all." Then she called the hospital where she worked. She worked there and asked them, "Am I covered? Does this insurance cover this? Do I need any written authorization?" They said, "No, you are pre-approved. It is fine." Then she called her insurance company, again, doing her due diligence, and said, "Am I pre approved for this? Do I need any written pre authorizations?" They said, "No, you are pre approved." She had the surgery. A week later, she had a bill for $80,000 and a threat to garnish her wages because guess what? It wasn't covered. All three of them lied to her. And so that's the other thing. You got a man, do not just rely on verbal, get it in writing. That's the one thing she didn't do. She didn't get it in writing. And the hospital that she was an employee at threatened to garnish her wages, even though they told her it was covered. So you got to be real careful with Interstim. It is expensive. There is big risks, and there are long-term consequences to it. If you've got metal in your body, then you're not going to be able to do certain procedures. If you're in a car accident and you need an MRI because you got a serious injury, you won't be able to have that because you got metal in your body. So instead, consider first urgent PC, which is the non-invasive neuromodulation. Urgent PC was invented in San Francisco by Dr. Marshall Staller at the same time that Interstim was created. And I was a patient of Dr. Stoller's, and he said he created it in part because he was so outraged by what he was seeing that was happening with the Interstim patients. And he said, "Guys, you don't have to cut somebody open and implant a lead to access this nerve. you can access this nerve right above the ankle where it is very close to the surface of the skin with just an acupuncture needle. And so, what they do is they stick an acupuncture needle. I had it done, my friends. I went to Europe and was on the BBC with Dr. Stoller to share my experience. Oh, it's so hard to do here. Look, I don't know if you can see this little tiny black spot right here. So here's my ankle bone, right? So there's my ankle bone. The needle goes 3 fingers above the ankle bone and then about 1 finger down. And you can see I've got a little tiny black mark there. That's my tattoo. I've got it on both ankles. So all they do is stick an acupuncture needle in there. They attach a TENS unit to it. Bam, you're on. You're stimulating that nerve. I had my first 2 hours without pain at week 4. I had my first day without pain at week 7, and it broke me out of a year-long agonizing pain flare. So if you're pondering neuromodulation, you really want to do the non-invasive one first because there are so few risks associated with it. And again, if you look at the MOD database and you search for urgent PC versus Interstim, urgent PC had a couple for tingling, although I haven't looked at it recently, whereas Interstim has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of very severe, even fatalities. The last time I counted, there were 18 or 19 fatalities, and that was a couple years ago that they associated with Interstim. Okay. All right. Carrie, looking for a recommended cushion to sit on all day at work? Maybe one. Oh, Carrie, I've got the cushion for you. Hold on. All right. You can find these in our store. So there are 2 cushions that we recommend. This is our bladder and prostate friendly chair cushion. And you can see that there is a groove down the middle. So each butt cheek is supported. But when you sit on it, nothing is pushing up against your urethra or your vulva or your prostate or your testicles or your rectum. And so if you've got centric pain, then this is the cushion for you, and you can buy it in our store. There are 4 sizes to it. It's sized based upon your weight and the location of your pain. So this is a foam cushion. This is the 3-inch soft cushion. But the cushions, the foam that we're getting now is different from the foam. We've been selling these for 15 years now. The foam is a little different now. It's a little bit stiffer now. But anyway, this is the cushion that I sit on if I'm having rectal pain, hemorrhoid pain, vulvar pain, urethral pain. And I'm not lying. I sat on this cushion, not this specific cushion, for 5 years. First 5 years I was building the IC network because I had so much pain sitting. Lifesaver, lifesaver. But I don't sit on that one so much anymore because I don't have crotch centric pain anymore. I have pain in my left butt cheek from pelvic floor. And so this waffle cushion is the cushion that I sit on now. And you can see it has, you can just blow it back up. So the cool thing about this cushion is it's got holes all over the place. This is to prevent bed sores and pressure sores for people in wheelchairs, but it works really well for people who have pelvic floor dysfunction if you have pain to the left or to the right of center. And you can see my pain is pretty much over here, and I've got these two holes here. And so this one now is my favorite cushion. But again, I will whip out the blue cushion if I need it. So you can buy both of these in the IC Network store. And the blue cushions are made specially for us. They're special made for the IC Network. And then the other ones are, we just buy them from the company. It's called a waffle cushion. I gotta turn the light on. It's getting dark here. And I'm gonna have to go feed my parents sooner rather than later. Alrighty. Let's keep going with your questions. We'll go for another 10, 15 minutes. Connie says that she would like to be a motivational speaker on IC. Well, girl, you got to call me and we'll see what we can do. The reality, see, I've been doing this for 25 years. I've got 25 years of reading journals and working with patients, and there's a lot of complexity to to our knowledge about IC. That it's not one thing. That we've got these subtypes. That there's tremendous diversity, and so it's a hard disease to talk about, or a hard condition to talk about, unless you've done a lot of prep and reading. And one of the things that one of the principles that I think is really really important is um, support group leaders have to be neutral, because we don't want to accidentally turn a patient away from something that might help them. And so when you're running a support group meeting, for example, your opinion tends to be the least important opinion in the room. Your job is to educate people about their options, kick their ass, get them to the doctor, and to go over the pros and cons. And yet, you can see as I'm doing this that I have biases, but they're not personal biases. They're factual biases, like my bias with Interstem. That's factual based on FDA data. So I the more voices speaking out, the better. I support anybody and everyone who wants to do it, but guys, you got to do your due diligence. At a minimum, you really need to have read the AUA guidelines and pretty much memorize them. I mean, that's true. That's a must. One thing we've got to do is we've got to fight bad information on Facebook right now. And like the person who said that earlier that Desert Harvest Aloe was a hoax, which couldn't be farther from the truth. I'm more than happy to help you. I'm more than happy to help you if you'd like you to do this. Diana, our live sessions are the first and third Sunday of the month scheduled, 12:30 Pacific time, and then our weekday ones are drop in, because I just try to mix it up to try to catch people at different times of the day. I've done some meetings at midnight Pacific time, because I'm trying to catch people in Australia and New Zealand and Asia. I've done others in the morning. I just mix it up during the week. And so, as long as you subscribe to our YouTube channel or our Facebook channel, you would get notified when when they go live. Oh, Erin, hun, I'm so sorry. Hey, you know who you can count on for a pep talk? Me. You need a pep talk. You're really struggling. Call me and let's see what we can do to give you a foundation. Let's explore what your subtype might be, and questions you want to ask your doctor and things you can try. That's my job, and I'm more than happy to try to help you with that. I want to get you feeling better and feeling like you've got control. Diana says her lead broke on her Interstem and she had to get surgery to replace it again. Exactly. That's paper I had on the window to block the sun, but now we need the light. Brittany, don't get me started on my three Interstems. Hallelujah, girl. First one removed in 2007, third one removed in 2017. Looks like Tracy's going to do a trial of Interstem. Well done. Carol, my doctor says I have prolapse. I should have hysterectomy. He thinks it will help my IC. What are your thoughts? I'm 59 with your menopause. You know, Carol, gosh, I just saw some really good pictures of what a prolapse looks. So, how can I demonstrate this? This might demonstrate it. Okay. So here's your pelvic floor, and here's your bladder in the proper position, and or your uterus in the proper position. So what happens is your muscles get weak and things drop. And before you know it, you've got your uterus or your bladder sticking out of your vagina. And if you got that, try walking with that. Yeah, it doesn't feel good. Or, I mean, that's why some people will use a pessary, which is a hard thing you stick up your vagina that will force your uterus and or your bladder back into the right position. Um, the other thing that happens with a prolapse, especially if it's a bladder prolapse, is, let's see, I'm trying to demonstrate it's hard. So here's your bladder, right? So your bladder is the thing. So sometimes what happens is it flips over. So it'll fold itself over. And when it folds itself over, you got a pocket up here that won't, might not drain of urine and can become infected. And it's just nasty. So, depending upon the severity of your prolapse, and again, prolapses happen. Once a prolapse has happened, that really means that your muscles are too weak to respond to physical therapy. I mean, they could, you could try, but for the most part, once that prolapse has happened, that pretty much means that those muscles are pretty damn weak. And so there comes a point when considering a hysterectomy is a very valid question. If the doctor said, if you didn't have a prolapse and the doctor was saying, well, hell, let's just do the hysterectomy and see if it'll help, I would completely disagree with that. We've had many patients have hysterectomies completely inappropriately, only to discover after the fact their pain never came from their uterus or their vagina. But if you have a very severe prolapse, a hysterectomy really makes sense. There's a wonderful website called hystersisters.com. At HYSTER Sisters, SISTERS, hystersisters.com. It's kind of a sister to the IC network. They were founded, we were founded the same year, and we became very good friends. And in fact, we used the same programmer for many, many years for our websites. She invested a lot of money in her website. I invested a lot of money instead in books and publications. So we kind of went slightly different directions. But you'll never find a better support group online than Hyster Sisters for considering hysterectomy. And that's where I went as soon as I learned that I had to have one, and it was absolutely invaluable. And they have a calendar thing where you sign up, you say when your surgery is, they will give you emails before the surgery on things to do, they will give you emails afterwards. It's just an exceptional website. So I would head on over there, learn a little bit more about the decisions that go into pondering hysterectomy and so forth. I'm also going to say that it is major surgery, even though it might be an outpatient procedure as mine was, and you'll be home in 3 hours. Do not underestimate the fact that this is indeed the hardest surgery that a woman can have. You will not be able to bend over and pick stuff up for 3 months. You will have stitches for 3 months. And it is a very challenging, it can be a very, very challenging recovery. It was for me. I had muscle spasms for 10 months, but we needed to do it. It saved my life, and I'm happy that I did it. But it was a lot harder than I expected it to be. Okay. But it was doable. I'm fine now. Okay. It was doable. All right. Just still going through some of your questions. Let me check YouTube here real quick. Look at the questions here on YouTube. Use hormone cream. Becky's saying she uses hormone cream to treat vaginal atrophy. It also helps with your IC symptoms. You don't know why it works. I'll tell you why it works. Because when you're using it vaginally, that hormone is also getting to your bladder, and your bladder can now use that estrogen to produce more mucus. That's exactly why it's working. The bladder relies on estrogen to produce that nice protective coating. And so I'm really, really, really glad that it's helping you. Alrighty, let's, whoops, drop my mouse. My other mouse. Kristen Penny says she's been diagnosed with pudendal neuralgia in addition to IC and a spastic pelvic floor. How they related? Spastic pelvic floor. That's the commonality here. When you've got muscles that are spasming, those muscles are squeezing the bladder and they're squeezing nerves. And so undoubtedly your therapeutic priority is going to be to work on those muscles, because it's a muscle that's squeezing your nerve. And so muscle therapy has to be a priority for you. And you also want to avoid things that are triggering that nerve. So whenever you have pudendal neuralgia, what you find is your symptoms are positional in nature. You're fine when you stand, when you sit down, it hurts. You're fine when you sleep. You sit on the side of the bed, it hurts. Although with I have a slight pudendal neuralgia of a slight little loop of my pudendal nerve. Um, for me, laying flat on my back makes my nerve flutter. So what they say is it's very important that you avoid whatever it is that's triggering that nerve pain, so we don't traumatize that nerve more. We want to not injure that nerve, but fundamentally we got to work on that pelvic floor because that pelvic floor is the foundational issue. Michelle, we do these live sessions every week. Usually the ones that are scheduled are the Sundays, first and third Sunday at 12:30 Pacific. The ones during the week are drop in, and I just stagger them randomly because I'm trying to be fair to everybody in time zones. Jasmine says she's been reading a lot about IC being linked to Lyme disease. No, that's not the way to look at it. It's that Lyme disease can be linked to IC subtype 2 bladder wall driven. A subtype of IC subtype 2 is Lyme disease and or chronic infection because we have found the pathogen of Lyme disease also in the bladder of patients with Lyme disease. If you have been exposed to Lyme disease or if you think you have Lyme disease, go have a test. I was tested for Lyme disease. It's very big in my county. I used to hike a lot, but I tested negative for Lyme. Linda says, my IC started after aggressive treatment for chronic Lyme. I can see that too. Brittany says her IC began after her first C-section. So Brittany, for you, I would be looking at muscles. You could have adhesions. You could have muscle injury from that C-section. That's really classic. Again, IC subtype 3, one of the absolute triggering events is having a baby and having a C-section like that. That's very, very common. Stephanie says this is tough recovery for you. Yeah. Who knew? God, doctors, it'd be so nice if they were like, honest isn't the right word, real about recovering from surgery, like recovering from a hydrodistension. Some doctors will say, easy peasy, you'll be going out to dinner. And what they don't say is, well, for some patients it can be easy, but for other patients it might be hard, and you might be in pain for a couple of days. You might be in pain for a week after a hydrodistension, depending upon how damaged your bladder is and or the way they do the hydrodistension. Vanessa says elimination diet has helped. Awesome. Cindy says, what do you do for pelvic floor dysfunction? You work with a pelvic floor physical therapist and you do your exercises. And we sell a couple of books. We need to invest in one of these. Ending Female Pelvic Pain by Isa Herrera. You'll see it's just filled. It's filled with things that you do to work on your pelvic floor and to stretch. We also have for men Ending Male Pelvic Pain or Heal Pelvic Pain by Amy Stein. We also have a series of DVDs and videos. If you, rather than reading, you would prefer to watch a video, and you can find those on our website in our store at icnsales.com. Carol, my doctor gave me a sample of estrase cream. Is it safe? That's an important question to ask your doctor. Topical estrogens generally are considered much safer than oral estrogens. But if you have a history of an estrogen-driven cancer, they may not want to do that. I have a history of estrogen cancer, but I do use a little tiny bit of it. TMI. There's no such thing as TMI. You just have to remember this is public, so, and it's recorded, so. Jasmine says that she had trouble with incontinence as a child. I did too. I wet the bed through like first grade or second grade myself. Found out you had IC at 21, turned 24, had a C-section. Jasmine, I'm just going to throw out here that again with the subtypes, you might be IC subtype 5, but maybe you sustained some sort of injury as a child, and which would put you in IC subtype 3 pelvic floor injury. Um, I would really watch the subtyping videos and see what resonates with you. Okay. Julie, am I familiar with Rio for prenatal neuralgia? No, we don't know what that is. Kelly says, I'm a little confused. I'm having a cystoscopy soon, and the doctor says the procedure alone will diagnose IC. Is this true? Are there other diagnostic measures that will indicate IC? I have the guidelines and will give them to him. A hydrodistension with cystoscopy was considered a gold standard prior to 2011. Um, However, when the American Urology Association guidelines came out, they specifically said that it was no longer the gold standard. Why? Because we now know that when you stretch the bladder, sometimes you wound the bladder and it can create a false positive. Diagnosis of IC is really based upon your symptoms, frequency, urgency, pressure, pain, the elimination of other potential conditions, whether it be infection, pelvic floor dysfunction, all that sort of stuff. But in the end, a hydrodistension with cystoscopy is recommended if the diagnosis is in doubt or if something weird is going on. I come from the position that information is power. And if I'm in pain, I want to know why I'm in pain. I believe that letting somebody look at your bladder is valuable in certain circumstances. So, if, for example, you have severe pain, if, for example, you're bleeding, if you're not responding to any treatment, that's really the context where doing a hydrodistension and giving that doctor the opportunity to look at your bladder just to make sure they haven't missed anything is valid, in my opinion. Let me give you a really clear example on that. For number one, you might have Hunner's lesions, and if those Hunner's lesions are not treated correctly, they would give you persisting pain. So that's one of the things that we look at in patients with recurring pain is, do they have a Hunner's lesion that has not been treated? But also, I was working with a patient earlier this year who they made a remarkable discovery. She was afraid to have the test. She said no to the test for years. Was really suffering with IC symptoms. When she finally let them look in her bladder, they found a giant bladder stone, a calcium oxalate crystalline stone with very, very sharp edges. And it was so big, it was like the size of an almond, right? Way, way too big to go through her urethra. This sucker had been floating around in her bladder for years, cutting her bladder wall. And when they finally broke it up and got it out there, her bladder wall healed and she is symptom free. So there are times when letting a doctor look is meaningful and valuable. I would just be conditional. I would have a discussion with the doctor about the technique. What are you planning on doing? If you're planning on doing a hydrodistension, number one, I want to know, will it be low pressure, short duration, or high pressure? Because the AUA says low pressure now because we don't want to rupture the bladder. Number two, if you find anything, what are you prepared to do? If you find Hunner's lesions, will you treat them at the time? It's a great tragedy to have a hydrodistension. They find a lesion and they do nothing about it. That is a tragedy. Because what does that mean? It's a lost opportunity. You're going to have it again, and they're going to have to finally treat those. So definitely want to have a discussion, how it's going to be done, what treatments are they going to do if they find anything, and then post-operative care. Even though it's not surgery, hydrodistension is painful. It can be painful when you stretch your bladder. I would absolutely demand pain medicine. Not a lot, maybe just 5 pills, but I would want a little bit of pain medicine for the next couple of days. Norcos, maybe cut in half or cut in quarters. It would be a real shame for you to get home with no pain medicine. Let's say you have it done on a Friday, and Friday night you're screaming, and the doctors are not going to be in their office until Monday. You're looking at 3 days of pain and/or a trip to the emergency room to get pain. So I know before my hysterectomy and before my DNC and before my hysteroscopy, I was real blunt. I said, I'm not doing this unless you give me a prescription first. I don't want a lot, but I refuse to do this without a little bit of help. And my OBGYN was very lucky. He was trusted me, small amounts, knew what I was doing, cut things in quarters, never used a lot. And that's how I dealt with it. I had a hydrodistension as part of that surgery, and a little bit of Norco afterwards really improved my recovery. Um, by the end of that first week after my hysterectomy, I was doing a quarter of a pill once a day, so nobody could ever accuse me of being a drug addict in any way, shape, or form. I used so little of it. Stephanie, how do you find your subtype? Girl, watch the video. It's pretty intuitive. This your symptoms will really point that out. Although it's going to take a doctor to say if you've got Hunter's lesions or not. Cheryl, what do we suggest to treating lesions? I've got a whole section on our website about that. Lesions are really only treated four ways. Number one, diet. You'd be a fool to be drinking acid every day with a Hunter's lesion in your bladder. But what the American Urology Association says, and sorry guys, it's getting dark here, and I don't have a light right there. It's just the window. You do fulguration, laser therapy, or steroid injection, or Lyris. Those are your treatments for that, along with not protecting the wounds in your bladder by not, following the IC diet. Man, if you got Hunter's lesions, you better be following the IC diet perfectly because you've got a bigger wound in your bladder, and the last thing we want to do is pour acid in that wound. Carol, I don't know. We can talk about it. I don't know. Carol, I just gave you my thoughts on pain meds. I think pain meds are real. The American Urology Association encourages doctors to prescribe pain meds to IC patients because the pain of IC has been related, compared, or studied, and I forget the right word. Anyway, it's been compared to terminal cancer pain. Hey, listen, bladder pain is agonizing pain. It is organ pain. It is characterized by being difficult to ignore. It is relentless. It pounds away at you. And it's not like other pain. I mean, if you had a cut on your hand, yeah, you'd feel the cut, but and you get your stitches or whatever. But the odds are, 8 hours later, you're not going to be feeling it that much, or a day later. The challenge with bladder pain is it's really, really relentless. And there are moments when you do need help with the pain. The challenge is getting help for that pain right now, given the fact that so many doctors are negative on opiate medication. We've talked about that on our website. I've got big articles on it. I think in our winter, spring magazine, the IC Optimist. Come on over to our website, read a little bit more about that. We got a pain management guide that you can order. And I would be happy to talk to you a little bit about it too. I'm not afraid of pain meds, guys. I'm absolutely not afraid of pain meds at all, but I know how to use them. I never use a lot, and I catch pain very, very early. And I've talked about that in other lectures here. John says, my urologist is aware of the AUA guidelines for pain, but he said to me that the current opioid crisis, urologists will no longer prescribe them. And that might be true. Urologists have always been pretty reluctant, but primary cares might do it. So we're in different times, my friends, and that's why something like medical marijuana is valid. I will tell you, I use Tiger Balm almost every day on my pelvic floor. That's over the counter. You gotta exhaust your over the counter remedies for pain. So this, for example, is NeuroQuell, which is a variant of Proserona. It's the essential oil of the marigold plant and the calendula plant, and it was the Endometriosis Association who helped us determine that this specific essential oil was pretty good at turning off pelvic pain. So you can buy this essential oil from us on our website, and that's not from us, that's from the Endometriosis Association. Linda, I hear you. So number one, we got to really understand what's triggering your pain, and we got to work on the source of the pain. Is it lesions? Is it tight pelvic floor muscles? Is it central sensitization? Yes, you're losing your pain meds, but that doesn't mean that we can't find out what's triggering the pain and deal with that once and for all, so you're no longer having that pain in the first place. Do you have untreated Hunter's lesions? If that's the case, girl, we got to get those lesions treated, because when you treat the lesions correctly, the pain often goes away in the majority of patients. Stephanie, what can you do for painful sex? Is there a way to know if it's due to IC? Well, it's really not due to IC. Is it due to pelvic floor tension, or is it due to dry tissue? And you can really pretty much tell that by yourself. But the rule for IC patients or pelvic pain patients is a lot of lube. We don't want dry skin on dry skin. Man, we're talking a half a tube of KY per sex act. You got to be super slippery down there. But if your muscles are tight, again, here's your pelvic floor. So you've got your urethra and your rectum going downwards, and so obviously if your muscles are tight, it's hard to pee and poop. But if your muscles are tight, it's hard to let a penis up there also, right? And so working on this pelvic floor to get that pelvic floor normal can do that. Carolyn Hunt, I'm so sorry about your brother. Remember, somebody taking pain medicine to so that they can function, so that they can be responsible, is using it correctly. Somebody who's taking pain medicine to escape life, that's a classic addict. If you're using a little bit of it so that you can get through the day, do your work, do the things you need to do, that is considered the correct use of pain meds. So, Brittany, if medical marijuana is not legal in your state, why don't you try hemp CBD oil? Hemp is legal in every state. Hemp CBD is considered a food supplement. You can order it online at Walmart or Target. Why don't you try that along with maybe try something like, the Proserona, the NeuroQuell, the Tiger Balm, something like that. Robin, so Robin, you said you have IC, you can't fight off your UTIs. 4 different bacteria each time. So generally, the reason why women get recurring bladder infections is because of a dry estrogen atrophied vagina and or bladder and or urethra. If you don't have a lot of mucus here, not only does irritants from your urine penetrate deep into this tissue, but so does bacteria. It's an open door for bacteria. And so there's definitely a very large group of postmenopausal women who get recurring infections over and over and over. And with that research, what they continue to find is that 24 hours before it arrived in the bladder, that bacteria was first in the vagina. So that then the researchers then said, well, what has happened to the vaginal defenses? Why has the vagina become a safe haven for infection? And the answer, hello, is still this: it's still estrogen atrophy. So, a woman with recurring infections is never diagnosed as a simple UTI. You're always diagnosed as a complex UTI. And generally, as part of antibiotic therapy, you are also given an estrogen cream to try to help your body create more mucus here so that you're not as vulnerable to those infections. But you also, my dear, are really a good candidate for next generation urine testing. It would be very interesting to do a next generation urine test to really get an idea of what's going on in your bladder from a bacterial standpoint. And you would go to bladderhealth.org to do that. So listen, I care for elderly parents and they have not eaten dinner yet. They're 95 and 90. I've got to go cook their dinner. So I'm gonna end this, but the first thing, I'm gonna end it 2 ways. Number one, if you have found this helpful, would you please support the IC Network and become a member? We have no paywall on our website. I've been doing this for 25 years. It's free. It always has been free. It always will be free. If I have anything to do with it, despite people saying that we're profiting off of patients, hello, it's free. Pretty hard to profit when you're giving it away. So how do we make all this happen? How have we made all this happen for the last 25 years? Is we have a magazine, the IC Optimist, you can subscribe to. You can become a member of the IC Network and get our magazine and get a whole bunch of other stuff on your member page. So you can do that over on icnsales.com. And when you buy your books and chair cushions and low acid coffees, that's what makes this happen. That's what makes this happen. So please come and do it, okay? Because we really need your support. We really, really, really need your support. And I love my job and I want to keep doing my job. All right. But far more important than that is the message I always end every meeting with. And that is, I want you to hear from me right now. This is not your fault. You have done absolutely nothing wrong. There is no shame. There is no blame. I don't want you to carry any weight on your shoulder. I don't want you feeling like you're damaged goods. I don't want you feeling like you're unworthy or unlovable. IC does not change your ability to be a friend, to be a sister, to be a mother, to be a daughter. IC does not change your ability to be a son, to be a brother, to be a friend, to be a husband. IC tends to be below the waist. Let us keep it there, my friends. We need to keep it there. I don't want you carrying any of the shame or the blame that I carried in my 20s as I was starting to develop this whole thing. I went through a very, very severe depression with very, very dark thoughts. And then the research came out. And the first research study said, oh, look, it can happen in some families. And I went, oh, holy hell. Wait a second. My sister has this. My mother has this. My grandmother had this. My aunt has this. My cousin has this. Lightning bulb. Lightning bulb. It was never my fault. Ever. And I thought it was. And I don't want you to do what I did. Okay, hon, you deserve the best that life has to offer. You deserve a happy life, you deserve a wonderful life, and you deserve the care and respect of your family. If there's a gift to IC, it's that you will never ever ever walk away from someone in pain, because you know what it's like to be alone and in pain. And it's terrible. And so if there's one gift to it, it's that you will be a better wife, and you will be a better mother, and you will be a better grandmother and a better sister and a better father because of that. So, but every day I need you to do three things, because I don't want you to, believe me, my first year, I couldn't sit in a car without bawling my eyes out, for God's sake. You asked me to go do something, I was like, no, I stayed at home with the eating pad in the fetal position. Slow steps to get you better. And I'm a perfect testimony that you get better. I'm way better now. I never would have believed it. I begged them to take my bladder out in 1993, and my doctor refused. He said, there are things you can do. And he was right. There are things you can do. I need you to do three things every day, little things. First thing I need you to do is do something for your soul, something that gives you comfort and nourishment. Whether it is walking and hugging a redwood tree, as I have been known to do, whether it is going to church, whether it is talking with a good friend or listening to Joel Osteen or whatever. Do something for 15 minutes that gives you comfort, because you deserve that comfort. You deserve that spiritual and nurturing, whatever your faith might be. Okay? The second thing I need you to do is I need you to do something every day for your bladder and for your pelvis. So whether it is taking a warm bath, whether it is following the IC diet, saying no to that tempting cup of coffee, as I did it over the weekend, because I think of it every freaking day. I want my pumpkin spice latte, and this is my year with no coffee. Do something that you know will help your body. Just one thing. And then last but not least, I need you to feed your brain. I need you to read one article a day on IC. Come to our website, go through our past blogs, read a freaking blog. Just one. Because if you do that once a day, look at that, man. We got 25 years of information on our website. You will slowly build that knowledge. I pour my heart and soul onto our website. I curate all the information. We are rated #1 in the world by Harvard Medical School and the University of London in 2 peer-reviewed studies that compared all the websites dedicated to IC. We are #1. We beat every other website. And that is because I curate that information very, very carefully. Alrighty, so remember your spirit, your body, and your brain. Little things every day over the long term will get you where I need you to be. All right, my friends, I gotta go because I gotta feed the folks. I wish you well. Our next meeting will be on the third Sunday. However, I'm going to do a drop-in meeting next week at some point in time. I don't know when. It might be at midnight. It might be in the morning. I don't know. We'll see where the spirit asks me to do it. All right. Okay, guys. I wish you well. See you later. And remember, you can call me. You can call the IC network if you need to. Let me just put that up one more time. 1-800-928-7496. All right, good people. Be well. Goodbye, YouTube.